Hello, I'm the Resolute Cartographer, and this is the story of Bromwell, West Virginia, and the mining magnates that made their home there in the Fallout universe. Before we get too deep into this video, I want to say a couple things. First, this video is going to be something of an experiment. While I typically put the real-world history before the Fallout history, I'm going to blend it with the Fallout history when applicable, and end the video with the real-world history rather than start with it. Second, this video will contain references to cut content that Bethesda created, but then didn't put into the game. My view on cut content is, in the spectrum of canon, it's somewhere between released material and fanfiction, so keep that in mind when I talk about it. I'm going to include it as there's some really interesting cut content that expands the lore on the characters I'm going to detail. But Bethesda may never release this content, or it could change in the future, so take it with a grain of salt. I'll be sure to tell you when it's cut content. Let's dig into this now. Bromwell is a town in real-world West Virginia that was once known for hosting more millionaires per capita than anywhere else in the United States, giving it excellent historical precedence for its in-game role as the home of some of the richest people in Appalachia. The real-world Bromwell lies in the same Pocahontas coalfield as Welch, West Virginia, a region that historically has provided the United States with some of the highest quality coal there is. Used as a cheap high-density fuel source in electricity generation, in the manufacturing industries, or for its chemical properties by the chemical industry, the coal industry has employed thousands of miners to hunt for and then extract this black rock from mine shafts across the region. Technological developments altered the role of miners over the years, causing pickaxes to give way to drills, and eventually large cutting machines. Mine carts gave way to conveyor belts. As the amount of physical labor required to harvest and transport coal decreased, so too did the need for human miners. Fewer and fewer human miners produced more and more coal. This phenomenon took place in both the real world and the Fallout universe, as I detailed in the video on Welch. This trend creates the backdrop to the story that took place in Bromwell in the years before the bombs. While real-world Bromwell is home to a brick-and-mortar historic district, it unfortunately seems that in-game we have only part of the Bromwell originally intended to be part of Appalachia. I say that because data miners have extracted this texture for a Welcome to Bromwell sign that never made it into the game. That, combined with the lack of a city center for Bromwell in-game, leads me to wonder what might have been. That being said, we do have access to the mining magnate mega mansions, and thanks to these structures, along with information found at a half a dozen other sites, we can piece together the lives of the Hornwright and Garyun families. Bromwell in-game is mainly composed of the 3 high-rise mansions, only 2 of which are accessible thanks to the actions of rioting out-of-work miners, but we'll get to that event soon enough. The higher of the remaining 2 mansions was owned by the Hornwright family, the lower by the Garyun family. Though these mega mansions are the most recognizable part of Bromwell, I personally include the neighboring Garyun Mining Company headquarters and the 4 small farmhouses to the southeast. While the Garyuns lived right next door to their company headquarters, Hornwright Industrial's HQ lies in the mud and debris-choked ruins of downtown Charleston to the north. The Garyun Mining Company headquarters is also home to the southwestern terminus of the monorail line running east to Watauga and beyond. The area roads are covered with the signs of anti-automation protests that started in the final month before the war. Now that we've covered the basic layout of the area, let's get into the lives of the Hornwrights and the Garyuns. The Garyun estate, at least atop its pedestal, is taller than the Hornwright estate, at 6 floors compared to the Hornwrights' 4. The Garyun family was headed by its matriarch Vivian Garyun, CEO of Garyun Mining Company. Vivian had the goal of running a profitable company while still employing human miners at the core of their efforts. When she was told that humans make mistakes, she responded, "Robots malfunction." She believed that a motivated human could do a job better than a robot. Though we don't know anything about her first husband, we do know of the man she loved at the time of the bombs, her husband, Brighton Gould. Brighton was a successful jeweler and a loving husband to Vivian. Together, Vivian and Brighton had embarked on at least one adventure to Africa to find a diamond mine together. When things were hard for Vivian, Brighton tried to help her find her way again. He said of his wife, "I'm a lucky man." Vivian's eldest child was her son, Bill Garyun. Almost all content relating to Bill Garyun is cut content, but, as I've said before, the cut content truly enhances the story here. It is because of Bill's cut content that I believe that Brighton is not Vivian's first husband, as Bill refers to his mother, "seeing that dullard of a jeweler." Bill appears to have been impetuous, entitled, and arrogant. He hated dealing with the miners, believing that they should feel lucky that his mother was, quote, "generous enough to give them jobs in the first place," end quote. More on Bill soon, but Vivian's next eldest son seems to have been Bryce Garyun. Bryce was the level-headed operations manager at Garyun Mining Company. According to Bryce's cut terminal entries, he appears to have been a hard worker and a good faith negotiator, attempting to resolve labor disputes with the workers peacefully. When Garyun security lead Sean Henriksen requested automated, fully armed turrets outside mine property, Bryce told him, quote, Incidents of criminal damage, costly as they are, don't justify the use of lethal force, end quote. What an out-of-character character Bryce Garyun was for the Fallout universe. Vivian's youngest son seems to have been Isaac Garyun. Outside of the cut content, we only know of Isaac due to his holotape, Isaac's Message to the Sloth, a strange missive on his love for these slow-moving animals he appears to have kept a menagerie of on the first floor of the Garyun estate. In the cut content, we know that Bill hated his brother sloths, and that after encountering an escaped specimen in his room, he wanted to wipe all the sloths in Isaac's zoo out. Vivian's last canonical relative is Alan Garyun, her destitute nephew who lost all of his inheritance in an investing scheme. Alan spent his days lounging on the couch or soaking in a hot tub, hating every minute of his existence due to his dependence and on being back home in what he called Colesville. Alan repaid his aunt's hospitality through the unauthorized sale of dangerous company property to Mr. Wolf of the Vichy Company. The last and non-canonical member of the family appears to have been Angelica Garyun, a character I found reference to only in terms of the room she had on the 5th floor of the Garyun estate, at least according to the strategy guide. Speaking of the estate, the first floor is occupied by the aforementioned sloth zoo, a lounge, and a bedroom. Isaac's, I assume, due to its close proximity to his sloths. The second floor is host to a game room, a liquor lounge, a gun range, and Bill Garyun's bedroom. The third floor is home to various sitting areas, Brighton's home office, and Bryce Garyun's bedroom. The fourth level is home to the main kitchen, dining room, a spare bedroom, a half bath, and a musically inclined liquor lounge. The fifth floor is home to the aforementioned Angelica Garyun's room, and Vivian and Brighton's bedroom with master bath, and a closet full of interesting stuff. Anyway, the sixth floor is home to a rooftop lounge where Alan Garyun slowly soaked in self-pity, a deck, and 3 hot tubs. Located to the southeast, the Hornwright estate is wider than the Garyuns and lies higher on the mountain. The Hornwright family was led by patriarch and CEO of Hornwright Industrial Mining Company, Daniel Hornwright. Daniel had the goal of running a company in which the only human workers were at the executive level. Daniel believed that every job that could be automated should be automated. Toward this end, Daniel threw every available resource into automation projects. Daniel was ruthless in business. When an environmental group, the Clear Skies Alliance, came forward with plans to clean the air of Appalachia, Daniel used those plans to construct a series of what he called ash forges. He then set fire to numerous mines and used these devices to mine the polluted air for valuable heavy metals. Daniel had a wife, referred to in separate entries as Evelyn or Elaine, and the two of them had at least one confirmed child together, Penelope Hornwright. Penelope attended Valtech University, where she graduated summa cum laude in 2070 with a double major in business administration and geological science. In her time at VTU, she participated in internships at her father's company in 2068 and in the Atomic Mining Services Company in 2069. Around the Hornwright Industrial Office, Daniel appears to have avoided nepotistic treatment of his daughter. When referring to ideas stemming directly from Penelope, he refers to her as, quote, one of my R&D gurus, unquote. He was concerned, though, at the anxiety she displayed when calling out strikebreakers, and thus he worked with Robco to find an alternative. Automated strikebreakers to break anti-automation strikes. A son was also potentially produced by the union of Daniel and Evelyn, in the form of Liam Hornwright. Liam was also a student at VTU, but contrary to Penelope's studious nature, Liam was known to be fairly consistently high, and produced a senior thesis detailing his desire to train dogs to operate vault equipment in the hope that they form a self-governing society. There is no sign of Liam anywhere in the Hornwright estate, so it's possible that he was a cousin to Penelope rather than a brother. Within the Hornwright estate, we find a home that was far more dedicated to business than the Garyun estate was. The first floor of the Hornwright estate is home to the helipad, boardroom, living room, lounge, kitchen, and dining room. Along with this, the master suite lies on this level. On the second floor, you can find Penelope Hornwright's room with a full-scale sauna. Penelope's office overlooks the main living room and is home to the only functioning terminal in the estate. The second level also contains guest bedrooms, a gym, and a lounge. The third floor is highly technical, with bot pods, Protecton charging pods, a robotics laboratory, and a workshop. The top floor is host to a Stingray jet hanging from the ceiling inside, and the deck outside surrounds a rooftop pool. Though the gaudy colors and contrasting rustic futuristic style of these homes is not to my taste, it's clear that these mansions were incredibly costly, and the families that owned them, incredibly wealthy. Though these two families were rivals seeking control of the mining of Appalachia, they were secretly close to coming together. Unbeknownst to the rest of their families, Bryce Garyun and Penelope Hornwright were in love and engaged to be married. By 2075, serious layoffs were taking place in the rank of Hornwright Industrial's miners as they were replaced by machines. In the Rusty Pick, a miner bar just south of Charleston, angry out-of-work miners were meeting. Auto miners, developed by Hornwright with the assistance from AMS, were rolling off the production line and into the miners' places. Thanks to the fine print in their worker contracts, Hornwright was also able to fire its workforce without warning or severance. McFlanagan and his associates O'Connor and Fletcher began to organize the miners for peaceful protests. From her office in Bromwell, Vivian Garyun considered the threat automation posed to the livelihood of the miners and to Garyun mining. She formulated a plan to augment her human workforce to resist automation, and she put it into action. By June of 2075, she had hired Harold Frost, an engineer that had been part of the Army's effort in making the T-45 power armor. She put his expertise to work designing the EX-17 excavator power armor. The forces involved with normal operation of the excavator power armor were too much for the chassis to hold up to. In September of 2075, Bryce Garyun suggested using the locally available and stronger, albeit more costly, black titanium. Work began with this new material as soon as Vivian approved it. This chassis was stronger, but required more energy to operate properly. As standard reactor technology was not up to the task, in May of 2075, Harold Frost requested Ultracite to put together a higher energy reactor. Ultracite is a radioactive, crystalline green material that was created by Atomic Mining Services as a byproduct of their use of atomic bombs in their mining process. AMS didn't know specifically what Ultracite was, or how they specifically had made it, but their research into its properties had made them believe that they could potentially power the entire nation with it. Knowing that it was a byproduct of their atomic mining, they began experimenting at test sites across Appalachia, including a small site between Bromwell and nearby Welch. Because they had sole control of the supply of Ultracite, and because Vivian was desperate to get her pet project working, she signed a 10-year commitment with AMS, increasing the cost of the excavator suits further. With the supply of Ultracite secured, the R&D department at Guerin completed an Ultracite reactor for their black titanium chassis on Christmas Eve 2076. Vivian's efforts on the excavator power armor faced split support, with Brighton and Bryce backing her, as Bill watched from the wings, waiting eagerly to step up should his mother fail. Despite the year-and-a-half effort at keeping humans in the mining process, Garyun had yet to turn the tide against the Hornwright auto miners, leading to more worker protests. Along with this, though Watauga had existed for over 3 decades, AMS had recently unveiled the automated improvements to their city of the future. Finally, on February 3, 2077, Garyun revealed the culmination of their efforts to the press, and the world was introduced to the excavator power armor. Over the next 2 months, Garyun would produce 2 more suits, one of which was occupied nearly constantly by Bryce Garyun, who used the suit to break the Garyun single-day ore extraction record. To advertise their new suit, Vivian arranged for the Man vs. Machine event to take place on Wednesday, April 7, 2077. In this event, a human in an excavator suit would be tested against the autominer. Vivian believed that this would prove the supremacy of the human spirit over automation. Unfortunately for Vivian, she played fair, while Daniel had no compunction against sabotage. Garyun lost. In the aftermath of this defeat, Vivian was devastated, and Garyun's stock price was in freefall. Vivian shut down the excavator project, meaning the cost of engineering of these suits was impossible to recoup. This led to Garyun having credit issues. Vivian locked herself into her study for days at a time, seriously shaken by the loss. She even considered resigning and handing the reins to Bryce. She finally decided that for the sake of keeping the company solvent, she would have to purchase some auto miners. She was not happy with the damage she was assuredly doing to the welfare of her workers, but she felt she was out of options. By June of 2077, Penelope Hornwright examined the stolen plans for the excavator power armor and was unimpressed with the design. With his chief opponent in business buying his products, Daniel turned his sights on a new goal, Ballot Measure 6. With Ballot Measure 6, aka the Appalachian Prosperity Act, Daniel hoped to sell the government automated systems that would replace all of its human bureaucracy by 2087. When Senator Sam Blackwell, a supporter of the working people of Appalachia, spoke out against the plan, Daniel had one of his fixers threaten Blackwell's daughter. Senator Blackwell whisked his daughter off to a secret bunker he had hidden in the toxic waste dump near Berkeley Springs. By the 16th of June, Sugar Grove was monitoring the miners of the Rusty Pick, but they found little of interest beyond underage drinking and anti-automation grumbling. Unsatisfied with just the auto miners, Daniel Hornwright began working on the Motherlode project, an automated system that would sniff out ore underground, burrow through the earth, and return to Hornwright sites and deposit their haul. As the project progressed, the Hornwright family was dealt a stunning blow when Mrs. Hornwright died. While Penelope took some time off work to mourn her mother, Daniel threw himself into his work and began to directly oversee the Motherlode project. Test sites for the Motherlode project went up across the area, drawing the curiosity of Charleston Herald reporter Bill Breyer. After visiting Hornwright HQ in Charleston and learning nothing, Breyer made his way out to one of the test sites. It was there that he crossed the barbed wire fence while brandishing his recorder in order to get a view of the classified project. When he was seen by the security guards on site, they mistook his recorder for a weapon and shot Mr. Breyer dead. Daniel's response? Automated security. According to the cut content, on August 27, 2077, protesters began to picket the Garyun estate, likely upset that Vivian had begun to purchase the miner replacements. Bill Garyun yelled at the protesters to go home. When one of them pelted him with a potato, he fired a shotgun into the air to disperse the mob. Incensed by the confrontation, Bill ordered a custom minigun under the name Strikebreaker, just in case things got, quote, really out of hand, unquote. It was around this time that protesters threw rotten vegetable at Penny Hornwright's limousine. When they were arrested for assault, Mick Flanagan tried to get them help from Senator Blackwell, but the senator had gone into hiding. Unable to call upon their patron, the miners were forced to carry on without political help. Protesting miners had experienced a variety of responses from Hornwright when protesting at Mineshaft Lane near Welch. The human guards that were once employed by Hornwright to fight these protesters off had laid down their weapons and joined the strikers. When the miners returned, they found strike-breaking robots. These bots were not so inclined to join them. When a group of these miners led by Fletcher returned in the closing days of August of 2077 to protest adjacent to the site, they discovered to their surprise that Hornwright had purchased the land on which they were protesting, making them trespassers. They were arrested on the spot. In response to the unfair arrests and dirty tricks, the remaining miner leaders, Mick Flanagan and O'Connor, decided the time for non-violent protest was over. They planned to start destroying automated mining equipment. On September 27th, miners used shovels to destroy Garyun auto miners. Mick Flanagan ordered a quantity of supplies for their decidedly violent actions against Hornwright and AMS going forward. These supplies were provided by Duchess, the Welch crime boss. Their opportunity to use them would come soon enough. As violent conflict appeared to be on the horizon, Bryce Garyun was doing everything that he could to de-escalate the situation, refusing to allow the use of lethal automated turrets to protect company equipment. In cut content, Bill Garyun's minigun Strikebreaker arrived on September 30th. He knew his mother wouldn't approve, but he erroneously believed that the plan was that he would one day be in charge, so he didn't really care what she thought. The very next day, October 1st, 2077, Atomic Mining Services' experimental detonations near Welch unexpectedly and explosively paid off. Having abandoned the site, deeming it a failure after 11 nuclear tests, AMS was as shocked as anyone when a massive vein of ultracite erupted all the way from the test site to Welch, where it shattered the town. AMS then tried to seize the town to control the supply of ultracite, but this final act of attempted theft was the spark that set off the worker anger. A gunfight broke out in the town between out-of-work miners and the AMS agents. That fight began to spread across the region. On October 2nd, Vandals defaced Garyun Mining's headquarters and threw rotten vegetables at Vivian's limousine. Vivian was already quite stressed dealing with the creditors hounding the company, so security made sure that the "they took our jobs" graffiti was removed by the time she got to work. Overnight, the miners gathered to take action, splitting into two groups, one to strike the Rockhound, the other to strike at Bromwell. In cut content, Bryce Garyun contacted the governor to request assistance. He responded that should things get out of hand, he would bring in the National Guard. In the morning, Mick Flanagan's group seized the Rockhound from Hornwright Industrial. In Bromwell, O'Connor's group used explosives to bring down the unfinished mansion. Garyun Mining went on red alert, posting armed guards in front of their headquarters. Governor Evans called in the National Guard. Hornwright closed their office in Charleston and deployed strikebreaker robots and independent contractors to guard their sites across the area. Unable to get in contact with her father in the R&D lab, Penelope hosted a meeting with executives where they strategized their legal plan to ensure that AMS got the blame for the riots on October 4th, 2077. According to the cut content, the following day O'Connor's group was arrested and Bryce opened negotiations with a group of miners. The rioting continued over the next week, but by the 12th he had come to an agreement and they were ready to go back to work. The canon content says that on October 12th, the National Guard managed to reclaim the Rockhound. Cut content says that Bill Garyun was pivotal in that act, firing Strikebreaker into Mick Flanagan's group. Though the National Guard was initially trying to get him to stand down, they joined in his assault when the miners started shooting back. When all was said and done, Bill claimed he was responsible for 6 to 7 kills and a good amount of collateral damage to the Rockhound. In his words, "That's how things were done back in the 1920s, and that's how they should be done today." Bryce was less than enthused with his brother's violence, reporting on his actions to their mother. Bill's actions at the Rockhound destroyed Bryce's gains through a week of negotiations, and thus they had to begin again. He ended his report to his mother with a threat of resignation if she did not rein in her eldest son. Penelope Hornwright was furious that it had taken so long to restore order. She wrote Governor Evans a letter that effectively relayed that the Hornwrights were dissatisfied that the massive quantity of campaign donations had not granted them the special treatment they felt they deserved. To that end, they were having to reconsider future donations. In the final piece of cut content, by October 20th, Bryce was devastated by the nearly 3 weeks of fighting at home and across the region. He contacted his fiancée Penelope and asked her to come to the estate, telling her that, quote, "The only thing that keeps me from losing it completely is knowing you're with me," unquote. Back in canon content, Penelope was worried by Bryce's message and wrote to assure him that she loved him and would come see him. She was finally ready to tell her father, but Daniel Hornwright was unreachable in the R&D department. The 23rd of October dawned calm and cool. The Rockhound was working 24 hours a day again to make up for the lost productivity. The fighting had ended in Welch but continued in the neighboring Beckley, where the National Guard was close to ending the resistance. Garyun Security Chief Henriksen was at work that morning when he heard low rumbles. Fearing more minor attacks, he attempted to contact Vivian Garyun but was unable to do so. In the family mansion, Penelope Hornwright also feared that the riots had begun again when she heard a loud explosion and saw a column of smoke rising nearby. When she attempted to contact her father, she was similarly unable to. We don't know what happened to the Hornwrights or the Garyuns, or Governor Evans for that matter, but I do have a few theories on that I'll get to in a minute. For now, it's safe to say that they were not home when Majority Leader Tanner Holbrook arrived from Charleston in the weeks following the bombs, looking for the mining magnates, more for their possible contacts with Washington than anything else. It appears that a pair of people were attempting to access the Garyun estate, but were unable to get the elevator doors open. For the time being, this marks the end of the story of the Hornwrights and the Garyuns. The struggle between these two families and their philosophies was the defining paradigm for the workers who worked for them, and then didn't. The warfare between these miners, their former corporate employers, and the government served to depopulate the area even before the bombs came down. Part of me wonders that if Hornwright hadn't cheated, would Garyun have won the man versus machine contest? And if so, would the excavator suit have saved enough miner jobs to prevent the riots? The real question though, the one that has implications for the future, is where are the Hornwrights and the Garyuns? There are three options with the greatest potential to me. First, that the families were sufficiently wealthy and connected to get transportation out of the region to some less radioactive locale. Second, that the families were sufficiently wealthy and connected enough to get spaces in a vault, just as Arthur Wood, head of Grafton Steel, had done for himself and his son. Third, and I believe the most likely, that these mining families, with mines across the region, would retreat underground in the face of a nuclear apocalypse. Whether they retained their humanity or joined the mole miners, I don't know. Whatever the case may be, I do hope that we see the Hornwrights and Garyuns again. An addendum. When I was close to releasing this video early in the day, I did one last check of the lore sources to make sure I had everything straight. This is when I found two Charleston Herald articles I had previously missed. These articles directly contradict other sources of lore found in the game. I started work on a revised version of this video before I found another contradictory piece of lore introduced by these articles. This made the job of creating a coherent timeline practically impossible. Specifically, the date of the Man vs. Machine event, according to these articles, took place 6 months after the posters advertising the event say it was scheduled to take place. Secondly, Garyun's R&D department claimed in one log that they were rushing to complete the excavator power armor, as AMS had recently revealed Watauga as the city of the future, and Hornwright were, quote, stepping up the game with their autominers, unquote. With the clear implication of this being that the autominers were created before the excavator power armor. The same Charleston Herald article that contradicted the date of the Man vs. Machine event also claimed that the excavator suit came before the autominers. With these contradictions in mind, I have decided to release this as my best interpretation of the lore available. I've chosen to accept that the autominers came before the excavator, and that the Man vs. Machine event took place in April as depicted on the advertisements, as it also helps to explain why Garyun's engineers felt rushed and unprepared for the event just 2 months after the first demonstration, rather than a full 8 months later as claimed by the Charleston Herald. This also explains why in September, Garyun Security reported that auto miners on their site had been attacked by protesters, and it further explains why Garyun would have been targeted by anti-automation protesters when the October date for the Man vs. Machine event would have anti-automation protesters attacking a non-automated mining company. One more thing before we get to the real-world history, the sloths. It seems highly likely that the mega sloths of Appalachia owe their existence to Isaac Garyun. Though we have Isaac to thank for these massive beasts, I believe that this is also a reference to the 1796 discoverer of Megalonyx, Greek for large claw, a species of ground sloth that lived in North America up to 11,000 years ago. Some fossilized bones of a sloth were found in a cave in Greenbrier County, Virginia, and brought to Vice President Thomas Jefferson. With an incomplete specimen, Jefferson theorized that this animal was a lion, and that further, this species was still extant. He asked Lewis and Clark to keep their eyes out on their cross-country expedition. That does it for the history of Bromwell in the Fallout universe, but as I mentioned before, Bromwell exists in the real world too. Bromwell is a small town in Mercer County, West Virginia, lying in a horseshoe bend of the Bluestone River, less than 2 miles from the border with Virginia. The area was settled by Americans of European descent in the 1880s, as coal was discovered in the region. In 1883, New York civil engineer Joseph H. Bromwell arrived in the area. He was appointed the first postmaster of the town. In 1884, the first rail line reached Bromwell. That same year, the first local coal mine utilizing the Pocahontas coalfield opened, with many additional mines following in its wake. In 1888, the town was incorporated and named for its postmaster, John H. Bromwell, who just the next year became the president of the Bromwell Bank. The Bromwell Bank was very well regarded until it was done by the Great Depression and was liquidated in 1933, with the final liquidation being completed in 1958. But going back to the 19th century, the Bromwell was home for many coal barons over the decades, giving it at one point the highest number of millionaires per capita. In 1910, a fire destroyed much of the downtown, but they rebuilt. The population of the town peaked for the 1920 census at 1,690. It fluctuated up and down until the 1950s, after which it fell every census from then on. In 1984, the downtown was added to the National Register of Historic Places. The estimated 2017 population was 346. Today, the town is home to numerous tourist attractions, including coal baron mansions, the Bromwell Bank, and the Pocahontas Trail System, part of the Hatfield-McCoy trails that crisscross the country in the area. That should just about do it for Bromwell and the mining magnates that made their lives there. This has been the Irresolute Cartographer. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you have any comments or questions, leave them for me and I'll try to get back to you. If you want to get notifications when I release these lore videos, follow me at Gaming with Maps on Twitter. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.